Hey there everybody, Brett from Lobets in the Belfry here for another video. We're at the start of 2024 and the season is getting pretty cold out, so in this time of year, I guess I want to focus on talking about some winter type horror stuff. And I could have watched The Shining or watched The Thing for like the 80 millionth time and talked about that, but I feel like I've covered those on this channel on more than several occasions. But in this, I wanted to talk about the movie 30 Days a Night. And I did see this movie probably not long after this movie came out. This is when I first initially saw it, but it's been a very long time. So I figured it is kind of winter time. As of yesterday, our neck of the woods did end up getting snow and some like freezing rain and such. Consider me thoroughly entertained by this movie. I do think this movie is heavily flawed, but I would say there's more positives than negatives to this movie. This movie stars Josh Hartnett, and he was in stuff like The Faculty. He was in Halloween H20. He was also in one of my favorite TV shows of recent memory, Penny Dreadful. And he also was in the newest Oppenheimer movie. It's about a small Alaskan town that deals with at some point in the year, the whole entire town will deal with 30 days of night where there's not a single bit of sunlight for a good 30 days. And apparently this is a real thing, but actually it lasts longer. I want to say it's like 60 some days rather than 30 some days. But this is a fascinating concept, and this movie is based off of the graphic novel, and I'd never read the graphic novel, so just going off of at least what this movie has presented to me. But yeah, it is a very entertaining movie, and I actually would recommend that a lot of people watch it. I am going to get into spoilers with this movie. I think this has a really good setup to it. It has a good pace set to the movie, and you actually have some really solid character work in this movie as well. I think there are some ideas that are underdeveloped. Eben, he is, a sheriff in this small town, and it seems like a lot of people who work at the police station are within the same family. Eben's little brother works at the police station. The grandmother of the family seems to work at the police station as well. But pretty much, they're getting ready to shut the town down for 30 days, knowing that it's basically going into a hibernation mode. There's a lot of people who do live in the town who are leaving the town because they know that, dealing with straight 30 days a night might be a little hard for some people. So a lot of people end up leaving, some people stay, and during all this, when they're making sure everything is good to go as far as, the hibernation mode goes, there's this mysterious stranger that makes his way into town, starts causing some trouble at their local diner, and Eben comes in, basically arrests the stranger and takes him back to the police station, forewarns everybody that in a really sinister way that they're coming, and they don't know what this is or what's going on. They just think the guy's just being crazy. On top of all this, the general story between Eben and his wife, Stella, they are separated currently, and they work together. There isn't really a specific reason why they separated. Later in the movie they kind of mentioned something. It's kind of hinted at that Eben either did want or didn't want kids, and I think Stella didn't want kids and Eben did want kids. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, there's a lot of conflict between their relationship, and they do get involved with this entire situation, and they basically have to work together to help themselves and a lot of the town members survive because vampires attack the town, and these are very different vampires. Even from back in the day, with Bela Lugosi and, Dracula and different vampires throughout the years, they did start off as these sinister beings, and then Twilight made them not sinister whatsoever. This movie, they are basically a bunch of rabid animals, I would say. It's almost like you took they're not technically zombies in 28 Days Later, but it's basically you took the zombies from 28 Days Later because they were just rabid and would run full speed to attack people. It's basically you took those and then made them vampires and put them in this movie. I do like the general concept of this. It's just a really fascinating concept of taking something that is the town is going into hibernation, and then you have these beings that can't be out in sunlight, and it's like it's the perfect situation for them, and a complete nightmare for everyone else in the Alaskan town.
Yeah, no, I'm living in a nightmare.
Movie has really solid character work, I will say. There are just some ideas that aren't really fully fleshed out. Give things room to breathe, and its setup is pretty slow, and it does build its way up into this big threat that they have to deal with the town. And there's one point in the movie the vampires are, there's just like a straight up massacre scene where like a lot of people in the town are just getting slaughtered by these vampires, these really rabid vampires. It's up to Eben, Stella, and the rest of the survivors to keep quiet and find different places to hide, and at least they are familiar with the cold and are able to do that really well. Some decisions that are made by characters that aren't the smartest ideas, and normally I can kind of brush past those like dumb ideas that characters decide to do in horror movies. There's one point in this movie where there is an older gentleman who is dealing with dementia, and they're trying to keep him quiet along with everyone else in like a certain house that's like boarded up and everything. And they do a fairly decent job at this, but there becomes a point where, of course, a guy with dementia, he's not going to remember what's going on, so he tries to leave, and then the guy's son, who's taking care of him, basically follows him out of the house, and then he tries to basically lure him back in, and the guy with dementia is like, I have to go to the bathroom. So he ends up letting him go into the bathroom by himself and then closes the door. I don't know why they decided that was okay. I mean, granted, right then in the moment, maybe they just weren't thinking anything of it. I mean, but it's like the guy was trying to leave the house, which was a bad idea because he was just going to get killed. And of course, the guy with dementia locks the bathroom door, and by the time they open the door, the window's open, the guy with dementia had left the house. And so the son runs out and tries to just like yell out for his dad. I'm like, you are dead at that point. And as cold-hearted as it sounds, it's like a guy with dementia who leaves the house. It's like, dude, you gotta just kind of let him go at that point because you're not gonna survive either. And the guy just runs out, and then he's like trying to quietly call out for his dad, and then he eventually just screams out, and I'm like, you're dead. And yeah, he ends up dying. There's some iffy decisions. There's a part towards the end of the movie too where like Stella as a character just randomly decides to rescue this little girl who's just out in the middle of this entire thing happening where everyone is in hiding who is a survivor, but this little girl is just walking amok. And so it's weird because you think that like, oh, this is clearly she's being used as bait by these vampires, but that actually happens earlier in the movie already with another lady where she's like walking out in the middle of nowhere just yelling help, and in the background you can see a lot of vampires like up on the roof kind of crawling and jumping from roof to roof, just trying to get people to come out to help this lady. But later in the movie that same type of thing happens with this little girl, but she's not being used as bait, and it's just really strange. It just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, maybe there was more as far as that goes with the graphic novel, or maybe they did have additional scenes that just ended up getting cut from the movie that gave a little more context to that. But yeah, it was definitely odd. A lot in this movie that is executed really, really well. I would say that upon finishing this movie, this is one of those movies. Like, I'm not against remakes completely. I think most remakes I kind of scoff at because it is big name movies, which obviously from a marketing purpose, that makes the most sense. But with movies like this, these are movies I movies like 30 Days a Night, I feel like would actually benefit from a remake because this movie has a lot of really well established things that just aren't executed the best. And I mean, you could make this so much better, and this movie or this source material has so much more potential to be really, really good. I mean, the pacing, the characters, and the setup was really good. My only complaint about the setup was they could have kept the vampires a little more mysterious because it basically just cuts to this one random scene where this guy is working in this one facility. He ends up leaving the facility because he hears a noise, and then he's just straight up attacked by all these vampires, and you see like the vampires up close immediately. And with that, it's like you could have just kept that in the dark. I mean, and like kept a little more mystery to it up until like our main characters came in contact with one at first, and then you could have gone from there. And yeah, I mean, that's my biggest nitpick on the setup, but I mean, overall, like, the pacing, it did take its time getting into it, which I did like. I mean, as far as the ending goes, like, I completely understand all the direction of why this ended up going the way it did, but the last, like, 20 minutes of this movie turned into some major schlock for me. And, yeah, because basically our main character, Eben, ends up injecting himself. His one partner ends up getting bitten by one of the vampires towards the end, and so he ends up decapitating his friend so he doesn't turn into one of them. At the very end, like, you know, there's a situation that happens with Stella where basically she's either all these vampires are basically burning it down the entire town to help cover up the fact that vampires exist, and this was just a crazy tragic incident that happened to this town and not vampires attacked them. And Stella is trapped under a vehicle, and so the town starts getting set aflame, and Eben's either like she's going to die by these vampires or she's going to burn. And so he makes the decision to take some of the blood from his partner who he killed. Pretty gnarly, by the way. You see a straight up decapitation of, like, a slow decapitation of his one partner, and that's a pretty gnarly scene. I will say it was pretty awesome. But he takes blood from his partner and he injects it into himself so he becomes one of the vampires himself. And throughout most of this movie, of course, the vampires themselves are killing these people, but they are separating the heads from their bodies. That way they don't become a part of them. They have a very, like, close-knit type of group, and they don't want to bring in any more. So, but Eben ends up injecting himself with the vampire's blood, goes out, and then turns into just a really cheesy resolution where he fights the lead vampire, basically, in, like, this big fight scene. And how he kills the lead vampire, he literally, like, shoves his hand, like, through the guy's face, just, like, out of nowhere. And I don't know, like, as funny as it was, like, I mean, I won't lie, I thought it was pretty hilarious, and, like, part of me enjoyed that. But at the same time, I'm like, this movie went from, even for a movie about vampires attacking a small Alaskan town, for as grounded as that was, it really jumped the shark in that last, the resolution of this movie. So I would just say, yeah, it kind of wrapped up kind of funny, and I understood why they went that way with it, but I feel like they could have written it a much more engaging, better way. Like, most of the movie is very horror and all about survival. And then just the last, basically confrontation of the movie was just this big, like, schlocky fight scene. And I don't know, it was just kind of corny and cheesy, but there is a lot to enjoy here, I would say. I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy this movie. So, yeah, this is one that if they remade this, I'd be all for it, because this is one that has a lot of potential. But, I mean, it just didn't deliver on all fronts. There is a lot to enjoy on this movie, so I will say that this is worth a watch. I mean, I think some people will probably enjoy this actually a lot more than I did and think it's probably legitimately a good movie. For me, I think that it is a thoroughly entertaining movie, and yeah, but overall, I can't say it's like actually a good movie. Like there's so much here that you could do better with. So, I mean, if they took this source material and remade it now, I actually think they probably would do a better job with this. But with remakes, they only go for something that knows that people are actually going to go watch. So I don't really see that happening with this, unfortunately. But yeah, overall, I enjoy 30 Days a Night. I think a lot of people will enjoy this. A lot of horror fans will enjoy this. If you enjoy some blood, if you enjoy like a real big winter atmosphere, this movie nails it on that front. Check it out. I mean, let me know what you think if you've seen this movie. And yeah, I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen this movie, so I thought I'd give it a rewatch, and it basically did feel like I was watching it for the first time. And yeah, I can't lie, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it even though I don't think it's like a super great movie, but you might think otherwise. So yeah, check it out regardless, but I'm going to wrap it up there for my review. I hope you enjoyed this review. Give me a thumbs up if you did. Let me know what you think of 30 Days a Night if you've seen it. If you're new to the channel, subscribe. Most of the time we do spooky stuff on this channel. A lot of horror movie reviews. And if it's not horror movie reviews, we usually do just spooky type theme stuff. But we also do a little of everything else. So if spooky is your thing, then this hopefully is the channel for you. But I'm going to wrap it up there. My name is Brett. I will see you in a future video. Bye.